So here's how it often will play out. You've got an iron worker, they're working on the job site, they get injured. They go to the doctor. Unfortunately, the doctor gives them an opioid painkiller. And if they've got that addictive tendency, you can call it a gene or just a tendency, they become addicted. They didn't intend to. They're not bad people. They almost become just a victim of the circumstance. So then they become addicted, but it's just a downward spiral. If you know people who have been through that cycle, it's very difficult to overcome an addiction, and they just feel worse and worse about themselves, and that leads to suicidal thoughts and tendencies. So we recognize this spiral, and the iron workers have put a big emphasis, number one, on addressing the addiction problem, but also in removing the stigma of suffering from an addiction. And especially in being in a recovery program, we've got some super strong members who are in recovery who are very vocal.
Welcome to the EBFC show, the easier, better for construction podcast. I'm your host, Felipe Engineer Manriquez. This show is all about the business of construction. Today's episode is sponsored by
Bosch Refine My Site is a cloud-based construction collaboration platform that applies lean principles to enable your entire team to plan, communicate, and execute in real time. It's the digital tool that works in tandem with your last planner system process and puts it all together in one simple, collaborative ecosystem. This easy-to-use platform is available in English, German, Spanish, Portuguese, and French, and can be used on desktops, tablets, and mobile devices. According to Spencer Easton, scheduling manager at Oakland Construction,
Refine My Site, in my opinion, is the best, leanest tool on the market for last planner systems.
Here's what our users have to say. We've looked at 3 other digital scheduling platforms and none compare to the straightforward approach Refine My Site takes. From milestone planning all the way down to daily tasks, this program gives every general contractor and their trade partners meaningful collaboration, accountability, and KPIs. Register today to try Refine My Site for free for 60 days.
Today's episode is sponsored by Construction Accelerator.
The design and construction industries come up with and build great things, but we also build and waste in how we do those things, in our interactions, in our contracts, in our logistics. So what does this do for our bottom line or our next project? The best firms maximize their value by removing that waste and only doing what's essential to the work, what makes them money. Construction Accelerator will train you to see the waste and give your teams the lean tools and experience to remove it immediately. All online. Construction Accelerator is made up of 3 to 9 minute videos that can be watched again and again in the field, at the office, and at home, all broken down by topic. Need to learn pool planning? We have videos on the process, how to set up a room, and how to kick off a team. Need to set up a target value delivery project? We discuss all the aspects of TVD, especially cost. Or maybe you just need to brush up on 5S. Well, we have videos on that as well. You can download and print reference materials to use on site to immediately translate watching into doing. Subscribe today at trycanow.com. Let's build an industry, not just a project.
Today's show is also sponsored by the Lean Construction Institute. LCI is working to lead the building industry in transforming its practices and culture. Its vision is to create a healthy and thriving industry that delivers outstanding project outcomes every time for everyone. Check the show notes for more information. Now, to the show. Welcome to the show, Cindy Menches. Cindy, I always enjoy our conversations together over the years, and I'm glad that we became fast friends talking about things like lean and learning, which are synonyms in my book. Cindy, can you introduce yourself and let the good people of the EBFC show audience know who you are?
I am Impact's Director of Professional Development and Training. I am a civil engineer by training and have actually never done design engineering. I've always been in construction. It's been, I believe, 32 years now. I was a former professor. That was my previous job before I joined Impact. So if you don't mind, I'd like to just say a couple of words of what is Impact,
Oh, I don't mind at all. Please let us
because I
know.
don't think people understand what we are and what we do. So Impact is actually an acronym: Ironworker Management Progressive Action Cooperative Trust. So we're a nonprofit, we're a private nonprofit association completely affiliated with the Ironworkers International Union. So we don't serve anyone else. We only serve the Ironworkers International Union in the US and in Canada. And we, Impact, are a labor management trust. This got set up, I believe, 15 years ago. And the way it works is we had labor leaders, and we had signatory contractors. And we were trying to find the best solution to advance our industry on both sides of the street, basically. And so the two parties got together, and at one of their conventions, they were able to pass a rule, I guess you could say, to pass a movement that the ironworkers and the contractors would all pay, we call it pennies per hour, into a fund, and the fund became Impact's budget. And in exchange, Impact provides services to ironworkers and contractors. So for example, we offer training. That's one of our big services we provide. There's no additional cost to an individual if they want to attend the training. They kind of got to get themselves there. But there are other avenues for helping them pay, like travel expenses. The class itself has no additional cost to it, but we give out grants. That's part of our function, so that if an individual wants to go to a training course, they could request a grant to help pay for their expenses. So we do grants, we do training, we have a maternity program, which I hope to talk about at some point during this, because that's, it's a big hit. We've got off the job accident insurance. So if an individual gets injured off the job, there's no stress, no concern. They can just call us up, and, with the doctor's information, we will provide a short-term disability to them. And there's a whole host of other services we provide. We provide marketing, so we will be able to provide them with the development of a website if they don't already have one. And then all they have to do year after year is just pay for their URL, but otherwise we will do the design for them. So there's many services, all of them listed on our website.
Cindy, we'll make sure to put that website in the show notes for everybody listening so they can get all that information and more. I love how you've got this all started with a very deep-seated respect for people. The ironworkers and the various different organizations. There are many ironworker companies in the US and Canada partnering together with the contractors for the benefit of the workers. I absolutely love that, Cindy.
Really, really important. So, that is our mission. Our mission, if you go to our website, it's going to tell you that basically just what I said. We're in the business of promoting our particular industry. But I see kind of my role as, since I'm Director of Professional Development and Training, so I will clarify this. I am not responsible for apprentice training. We have an entire department that focuses on apprentice training. So if an individual wants to join the union, they start out as an apprentice, and there's no cost to the training. So they just simply join. Obviously, they have to go through an application process, but we will train them. And we have apprentice training centers in virtually, more than one in every state. We have 157.
Wow.
So more than one in every state, plus Canada, all the provinces. Some states, obviously, because we have pretty big cities in various states, we'll have multiple training centers. So they take care of the apprentice training, which I call skills training. On my side, I tend to do more of I call it human skills training. I call it for foreman and above. If you need a project management course, we've got one. If you need leadership training, communications, we have what I call different competencies. So it would be business fundamentals.
Okay.
And I say fundamentals like accounting, insurance, if you want to start your business or if you're already in business, but you need help. So we've got business fundamentals, we've got business administration. So very specific courses on once you've got your business up and running, how do you be successful? We've got project management, leadership. We have two types of leadership, just kind of general leadership, and we have field leadership, a very specific focus on training the ironworkers to be really solid field leaders. And
That's incredible, Cindy. I got to just stop you one more time because that
sure, anytime.
To think about that as an iron worker coming up in the trades, you can start a business and get support from Impact.
That's true.
To make a viable business, learn all the skills necessary to grow your business.
Right.
And then create the next generation or another wave of iron workers serving the construction industry in your local geography. Or if you scale large enough, you can go across many geographies. We were at a conference and we met a few individuals that had their own iron worker and steel business. I think that's a testament to the entrepreneurship encouragement that Impact is doing.
Okay, so you know that my favorite subject is training and learning. I would say some of our most important and popular courses, number one probably is a class we call the Business Fundamentals Academy. It's for iron workers who want to start their own company. They want to become a union iron worker contractor. One of the challenges is in construction, there is a fairly high failure rate for companies. If they can make it to year 7, they stand a very good chance of being successful. But it's those first 7 years that are the most challenging. And many individuals don't completely understand what they need to do to get the business started and to, we'll call it, increase their chances of success. So we provide a class, it's 5 full days. 5 full days. So they have to make that commitment that they're going to be there for those 5 full days. And during that week, we bring in different experts to talk about subjects that we call it fundamental, because we can't teach them everything they need to know, but we will teach them the most basic things they must know just to get started. So we start out with a piece on like success and failure, like what are the characteristics of companies that actually succeed. And then we jump into accounting and finance.
So exciting.
And yeah, so that's the most challenging day. We call that day 2. Day 1 is, just getting them motivated to stay in the class. Don't give up. And we talk to them about like picking their name and setting up their LLC or their S or C corps. And we'll talk about how to put together a business plan. And that, of course, is a whole class by itself, just doing business planning. But we want to encourage it. And then day 2 is accounting all day long. That's the most challenging day for them.
That's when the most coffee gets drunk at the training, right?
Yeah, that's where like they're, oh my gosh. They have no idea. But we feel like it's critically important. They need to understand that you must know the finances of your company to be successful.
Absolutely.
So day 3 is a combination of talking about insurance. So it's just general types of insurance plus workers' comp, which is a huge expense for our contractors. And then the second half of the day, we call it business development and marketing. It's how do you build your network of general contractors and fabricators that you want to work with, so you can actually find work and get awarded work. And of course, we have a whole separate class just on cost estimating. I'll talk about that next.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, so they just first need to understand, like, where do you even go to find projects to bid on? and how important it is to build that network. And then day 4 is construction contracts, like understanding the language in construction contracts. That's my favorite day, of course, because I teach it. Love talking about it. Oh my gosh. So then the final day is, we call it the payment process, a critically important, very difficult process of once you've done the work, how do you actually get paid and what to expect. So that makes up the 5 days. Obviously, we can't include everything, but we felt like that was the most fundamental topics they need to know just to get started.
And what kind of people come through that course, Cindy? Like, tell me some of the personalities and where are they in their career? Typically, what do you see in that course?
Quite a variety. We get some what I would call fairly early career iron workers. Most of them are actually iron workers coming out of the field. But when I say early, that would be 10 years or less experience out in the field. And then we have a lot of like the mid-range between 10 and 20 years, where they've done the work out in the field and they just feel like, okay, it's time. I'm ready to take the next step to start my own company. And then we get a few that are more in the senior part of their careers beyond 20 years, where they might still have a good 20 years left and want to get a company started. Yeah, so a lot of variety, lots of diversity. We have surprisingly quite a few women that come through. Obviously, we're not women heavy in the iron workers, but we do get quite a few women to come through and lots of minorities. So really, it's we kind of think that's possibly our most important class, helping the individual who has that motivation to actually start their own company, and it keeps the industry going. They're a new contractor, they're going to hire iron workers. That helps our union grow.
That's beautiful. It's a reinforcing feedback loop in systems thinking.
Yes.
And
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
just good for the United States too, Cindy. You mentioned that a lot of the companies struggle with making it past the first 7 years. We see the same thing in business in general in the United States, where
True.
the first year is very delicate. And then if you get past 5-year mark is when a lot of people that, especially in large organizations that make investments into smaller businesses, or just looking at businesses in general, getting past that 5-year mark is a major milestone. But then the 10-year mark is even more precarious. Very few organizations get past 10 years.
Great commentary, because that, made me think about the next step, which is after we started the business fundamentals, which we've been teaching it for 6 years, basically. A couple years after that, we realized that people were walking away from the class, and some would start their business, but others they were still struggling with, how do I really get going? Because the challenge is they need to work. So they need to they have to have their day job, go out and work in the field. And in the evenings, they were struggling to get the business going. So we now have a program, we call it Build, B-I-L-D, run by another individual. It's the Business Incubator Leadership Development Program. And so when an individual expresses an interest in starting a company, or maybe they've already started it and they're kind of in the early stages, they can call up my colleague, Carrie Walters, a male, Carrie Walters, who has experience with starting his own company, and he formerly worked for Barton Mallow. He's basically an accountant. That's his skills training. So he's got a great set of skills, and a former Marine, so he's very disciplined. And so we have quite a number of individuals that are, they call it being in his program, where he helps them connect with the right resources to increase that possibility of success. Because we understand the training alone isn't quite going to do it. They need additional help.
I like that. Positive shout out to Carrie.
Yes, Carrie.
Yeah, Carrie, thank you.
You might need to be the next person on your podcast. It's just a fantastic program. He could probably tell you all about the different stages that people are in and what kinds of resources they tend to need the most. I mean, it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, we'll add contact info, Cindy. If you send that to me, I'll make sure we put his contact info in the show notes so that anyone who's out there thinking about starting a business in ironwork and you're an ironworker, please, there are resources for you. You've already paid for them. And as working for a general contractor, we've already paid for you. So please take advantage of the things that are out there at your disposal, because we need you to start businesses. We need future business leaders. And Cindy, I know that you and I both love the topic of leadership. Do you guys have a course on leadership?
Many. Oh my, we have many. So I'm going to talk about maybe our most important one. So just to put things into context, there are some classes that we impact develop in-house. And when I say we, I'm a one-man show. So it's usually me, and I go out and I find a subject matter expert and we work together. So we developed the Business Fundamentals Academy in-house.
Okay.
But all the people that teach it other than myself are essentially vendors that we brought in. They've got special expertise. And so for most of our courses, I will say this, for most of our courses, I have gone out and found vendors to teach the courses. So leadership's a pretty general subject. I wasn't about to create that from scratch, because there's some outstanding programs out there. So a shout out to the vendor we use for our most important one. It's Fmi, pretty well known in the construction industry,
Yes.
construction industry consultant. They also do training. They have something called, on their end, it's called the Leadership Institute. It's a 4-day program, and they have tailored a version of it that we call Impacts Leadership Experience. And it's, again, a 4-day program. Again, we fully cover the expenses for an individual that goes through it, but there's a whole nomination process, because it's geared towards up and coming leaders or individuals that are newly in a leadership position, or they're in a leadership position, but they still have many years to work, 5 to 10 or more years to work. And the FMI program, the way it's structured is there are a lot of team activities, and there's actually a team contest. But maybe the highlight of it is the individual has to complete a series of basically self-assessments. So it assess, like they do the Myers-Briggs test, and they do the Highlands Natural Abilities Battery, and they do a 360 evaluation. And the final day is they work one-on-one with a counselor. And so for many individuals that go through the program, this is absolutely just almost a life changer for them. Like they've done some self-reflection, which, I love that. I just
Me
love
too.
that.
I'm with you.
Totally love it. I think everybody should do some self-reflection. And for many, this might be the first time they've really done that very deep dive into their motivations and their personality and what drives them. And they'll walk away, many of them walk away just transformed. It's phenomenal. So that's our most popular leadership course, but we have a variety of others, mostly taught by the different vendors. And the other ones tend to be a little shorter. We have.
Well, on that one, Cindy, let me bring you back to that one. So on that leadership course that you guys have in from FMI, do you see the nominations being like journeymen already going to lead positions, or where are they where are they coming in from?
The types of participants include like CEOs, vice presidents. They might be a project manager that's slated to actually move up into the C-suite. We've got field superintendents, some general foremen. We typically don't get many below general foreman.
Okay, so we got general foreman coming into this, and then people inside of organizations or companies running inside.
Yes,
so this is incredible, because at those levels, at general foreman and above, you've got a lot of people that you're influencing and leading in your organizations. What would you gauge as like the size of the organizations? Like, is it like a 10-person operation all the way to like how big?
That sounds about right. So usually it could be anywhere from a small organization. So for example, someone who's in business fundamentals, who's started their company, they're now the CEO, they're maybe a little nervous about being in that kind of a leadership role. They're now leading the entire company. They qualify. There are individuals, like you say, that are in the 10 employee type of company. There are big companies pretty regularly will send their up and coming leaders because they see, that I give them credit for having the vision. They recognize their time in their company is finite and they need to have, a pool of individuals that are going to run the company when they're gone. And we also get, so it's not just contractors and just the ironworkers, it's also labor leaders. We'll say, so at the local union, so I'll give a quick lesson if you don't understand the way the union is structured. In every state, and oftentimes in many of the cities in every state, they have what's called a local union. And so the local union is their own little business. We often use the analogy, it's sort of like a franchise.
Sure, makes sense.
So you've got here in Washington, D.C., the International Association of the Ironworkers and the union. And then in all these different states and in different cities, the local union, the local union will run their own business operations. And so all of those individuals, especially those that are business managers or business agents, they're eligible to be in the program. And we really like a balance. We like to have about 50% of the participants on the more of the contractor side, employer side, and about 50% on labor side, so that they can see each other's perspective and they can have those great conversations.
And I love that too, because surprise, we're all human beings. Doesn't matter what we do for a living. And like Cindy, even yourself, I mean, your background, you jump right over the fact that you served in the U.S. military. Right. And you'd love learning and teaching. And you've even been a professor and taught one of my friends. You just jumped over all of that stuff. Can you just go back for a second and just how did your experiences in the Air Force help you when you transition into teaching and then being so instrumental on guiding so many business leaders in the union ironworkers in the United States of America and Canada?
Right. So it's kind of a interesting path, we'll say. I was so I'm going to start right from the very beginning.
Hey, real quick.
Construction is one of the only industries that's become less productive over the past 6 decades. 60% of construction job cost is labor. 80% of construction projects are over budget. 60% aren't on time. Struxy replaces paper timesheets and manual data entry with easy-to-use software. How much are inefficient job sites costing you? One of our customers estimates they'll save millions per year with Struxy. Read the case study at our website, struxy.com. That's STRUXI.com. Software for hard work. You can also visit us at World of Concrete in Las Vegas come January.
And, be completely honest with you, I came from kind of a lower income family. And so my parents were not college educated. I wanted to go to college, but I had no idea really how I was going to do that without, being able to get scholarships. So got accepted into a great school, USC, in Southern California. And they paid for my first year, but after my first year, I had to find my own funding, basically. At the time, my brother had just graduated from college, and he did it the hard way. He kind of worked and went to school, and he joined the Marine Reserves, but none of his education was paid for. So when I got accepted, he right away started pushing me to get an Air Force scholarship. He was honest. He said, like, don't get Army, don't get Marines, just go to the Air Force. So I went into Air Force ROTC, ultimately did get the scholarship. They paid for all that education, which was great. Had the degree, civil
Yes.
engineering, right? So it was pretty clear what I was going to do when I got in the Air Force. So I had my degree in civil engineering, went to my first base, MacDill Air Force Base in Florida. And right away, they put me in a department on project planning. And from there, I was only there for about a year and a half. I left and went out onto the Aleutian Islands. And there it was all very much, everybody does it themselves. Like, we had no extra support there because we were so far out. And they put me in charge of construction, being the owner's representative. So I worked hand in hand with the Corps of Engineers. I didn't work for them, but I was the owner's rep and they were the contract manager for it, for all the construction out there. That's how I got into construction.
Oh my God, that's fascinating. Cindy, I didn't know that about you. All the times we've talked for years and years and years, I had no idea. That is awesome. That's a great story.
Oh, it was fantastic. Yeah.
And you just, oh no, I just want to highlight to everybody, like, I've known Cindy for a long time. She always just grabs hold and takes responsibility, like you did with your education, like you did when you were out in, what do they say, in like in the middle of nowhere, far, far, far away. And I think that's really admirable. And I want to just say that it's inspiring, Cindy, to hear your story and just how you had a problem and you went after it. And that type of learning mindset you've transferred through all the work that you do and every interaction that you've had. And keep going, please. I'm just getting excited because I'm feeling you're giving me my morning inspiration.
Well, great. Yeah, I'm glad I can contribute to wake me. I know you're on a much earlier timeline than I am this morning.
It's 0 dark 30, Cindy.
Oh yeah. Here it's like mid morning for us. So yeah, after that, I ended up spending 9 years in the military because they sent me back to school. When I left the Aleutian Islands, they sent me back to Penn State University, another shout out there, great school.
Oh my God. Love Penn State. Everybody I've met from Penn State. I absolutely love Penn State. Go Penn State. I didn't go there, but everybody I meet that comes from Penn State are just amazing people.
It's just a fantastic school, fantastic place. I really, really enjoyed it. But once I got done there, I owed them the Air Force 4 more years. And so I've, filled out my time, moved around the US several times. And eventually my time was up. I had a choice. I could stay in or I could get out. But I really wanted to stay in the construction industry. And the way it works in the military, you tend to rise through the ranks and you might not be able to stay in your chosen field because you're going to become a leader. And so I totally got that, but I really wanted to stay in construction. So I got out and I was in Texas when I got out and I left there and I went to Chicago. I have never lived in Chicago before, but I felt like this is easy. I'm the construction person. It'll be easy to get a job in Chicago. It turned out to be totally true. Got there, had no problem getting a job. Worked in the construction industry in Chicago, just basically being a project manager. But, I'm married and my husband had a career. He was actually at that point up at the, like a fire chief level. So he got a job in Madison, Wisconsin. And so I followed him there and went to work on their performing arts center. I was one of the project managers for Findorf. And while I was there, I found out I had GI Bill. So in addition to all the education that the Air Force provided, they said I had more education benefits. So I was literally working right down the street from the University of Wisconsin and went in and talked to them and said, I have the benefits. I'd really like to work on a Ph.D. At the time I was 36. And they said, my academic advisor was primarily Awad Hanna, Dr. Awad Hanna. He works heavily with CII and Jeff Russell. And so Awad Hanna very kindly hired me on. I had a fellowship through Mortensen in addition to my Air Force benefits. And, and so I went to school full time to get the PhD. Of course, they were like pushing me like, you're not getting any younger. You got to hurry up. So I managed to get it done before I turned 40. And so it was great. It's totally worth it. Anyone thinking of doing a PhD, it's totally worth it. Just remember, you probably should try to get it done before you hit 40. So from there, I got hired to be an assistant professor at the University of Texas in Austin, Texas. Obviously a great school.
Yes.
Top-rated programs, just a terrific faculty, terrific program. So I worked there for about 3.5 years. I admit I had a really strong desire to live in Chicago. That was my favorite spot on earth.
Do you see the Sears Tower over my shoulder? It's hard to see, but there's a little Sears Tower right there. That's where I grew up too. And I was also project manager in Chicago. Love the city.
I never knew that. So my story is I left the University of Texas. I got hired by the Illinois Institute of Technology there in Chicago. Obviously a much smaller school. Fine with me. Loved the location, absolutely loved. And I felt like I was strongly connected to industry there. A lot of companies, because I was an academic, I'm not one of their competitors, there to help. This leads into like, how did I get involved with lean construction? Because when I showed up there in Chicago, which was 2010, I went first of all and visited the Associated General Contractors there and just asked them in general, like, what's going on in Chicago? What should I know about? I'm just going to start my career here with IIT. And they said, well, all of our contractors are interested in this new concept. It's called lean. I kind of laughed. I thought, yeah, that's not new. And yeah, because that was 2010, right? 2010. And they said, but it's new to us. So I totally got it. So, okay, right. I get it. And so what I told them was, I'd be willing to teach a lean class. And they knew that there were some specific contractors that were trying to get a community of practice started. And they said, we can put you together. We can put you in touch with these particular contractors that have approached us so that you guys can talk about it. And that's how it evolved. We had kind of we'll call it the ones that got us started, the key contractors that were initially interested. And what they wanted was for basically the chair of the COP, they wanted a neutral party. So they didn't want, someone to be in charge there that would be a competitor for them. Yeah. They're all, kind of.
I just got to tell all the listeners, Cindy, I worked in Chicago for the first part of my career. It is one of the most competitive markets.
Very much so.
I've worked in a couple of cities around the United States, and I've never felt the same level of competition like I do in Chicago. It is definitely something in the culture, and competition is not a bad thing, but it can be problematic when you're trying to start something like a lean construction community of practice.
Exactly.
So, and I will give a shout out to our mutual friend, Leon. Leon, if you're listening, we love you, Leon.
One of the originals. Yeah, Leon Lajeunesse, Custom Contracting. So he was one of the founding fathers. I'll give a sad shout out, Bob Creer. He was from Hill Group, who unfortunately passed away. Mark Skender, Afshan, they're heavily involved with lean. There was a really solid group of
those are good people.
CEOs, very top level.
Half the people you named are good friends of mine still.
Great.
Yep. Yeah, Afshan is he's got a special place in my heart, and he loves to make fun of me. So that's just bonus.
Yeah, I mean, he was really one of the pushers of getting this started. So he had been working, I believe, for a home builder, was very successful at getting lean going, got hired by Skender, and was very successful at helping Skender seriously improve their processes in their companies. So they're still both very, very involved with lean, and all great company. And they were so, as a professor, they were just fantastic for me to work at, because I remember this one time they had their basically their weekly work planning process, and I was with my student, and we were at their board talking about how does this really work, and they went into great depth explaining. And in the process, I mean, this was great for all of us. They were explaining how they do it, and I said, that's interesting, because I haven't seen anyone else do it that way. It was like the aha for them. They're like, oh, interesting. We hadn't really thought that we might be the only ones doing this way. So it was great for them, great for me. Great to have that really deep conversation. I felt very privileged because many of the contractors would share their processes with me. I so enjoyed my time in Chicago, but I'll put this as, as delicate as I can. I just wasn't that crazy about the academic life. It was really a tremendous amount of work, not to put anyone off who wants to go into academics. You're doing a lot of research, lots of pressure to keep bringing money in for research, as well as teaching. I enjoyed the students thoroughly. So one of my agreements was I would teach the lean course. I would also be one of the chairs of their COP. We would hold events. I think we were doing it quarterly. We would have an afternoon event. It was a learning event. And, I promised to teach students so that they could hire them. So the companies would hire someone who had some knowledge of lean. And eventually I kind of migrated away from that. I hated to leave Chicago, and I hated to leave all my friends there. But then I got this opportunity here at the Ironworkers International Union. It's really, really been fantastic. This is where I feel at home.
And every time I've seen you just light up with a big smile, and all the people at Impact that we've been together with, they definitely love having you at Impact.
I appreciate it. I so enjoy being here. And I think they know that too. I just, sometimes you're looking for, that job that's really going to be satisfying. I found it here. So if you're not happy in your job, just keep looking. It's out there.
Do what Cindy does. Just show up at the front door and say, hey, what's going on here that I should know about? And people just open up and tell you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So it was really great being an academic and having kind of that much privilege with the contractors at Impact here. So when I admit, when I got hired, I wasn't really sure what I would be doing. And they said, well, you get to create your own job. And they kind of gave me some general parameters, like we need to get some training going. They had a little bit of training going for the contractor. We used to call it contractor training. I prefer to think of it as like non-skills. It's not the apprentice training. So like I say, foreman and above, that's how it's evolved, basically, is all about conducting training programs around the country. This will lead into a topic I know you wanted to talk about, getting things done.
Let's go there. Let's
GTD.
Go.
So I was first introduced to getting things done, GTD, back in 2006 when I became a professor at the University of Texas. They wanted to teach us about time management. I know now why.
Wait a minute. Wait. You're telling me like at the university, the school recognized that they needed to teach their professors about time management?
That's true.
Oh, I love that.
So when there's like a orientation process for new professors there, and once a month they'd have like a speaker, and we would go and listen to the speaker on the different topics. They were, admittedly, they're trying to increase the success of their professors, and they recognize that these are going to be they'll be the busiest people on the planet other than the president of the United States. That's what I used to say. I can't complain because, the president's busier than I am, but otherwise I felt like I was the busiest person on the planet. And so time management was important. I always loved that type of topic. I was super organized. I came from the military, loved it in the military, was just ultra organized. And I went to this this time management lecture, we'll say, put on by another young professor. And he said, he held up the book and he said, "This is what I use." And I devoured the book. I bought it. I read the whole thing. I still have my original copy all marked up with little tabs in it, and set up my system, which I've been using ever since, 15 years.
Yep. And Cindy's I want to just tell everybody,
Yeah.
like, Cindy's got such a good habit on GTD that later she became a champion, or Lean Construction Institute, for me as a speaker. She was my champion. I was showing her what Scrum is, and it did not convert her. She did not convert. She stayed
Yeah.
GTD. That's how strong it is for her.
It's solidly in place.
Yes.
It works very well in my current position. It maybe works well.
You're the only one, Cindy. You're my only one that got away, that I didn't convert so far. I was batting 1,000 until I bumped into GTD.
I still need to learn about Scrum, how we can connect the two. But definitely I've got my system in place. And a lot of what I do here at the Ironworkers is, I would say there's a few main tasks. Obviously, I develop coursework, but these are specialized coursework. I told you I would tell you more about it. Like, we developed the Business Fundamentals Academy, myself and some subject matter experts. But we've also recently developed a cost estimating class very specific to the ironworking industry. So we've got a structural cost estimating course. That's for structural steel, the big pieces. Right. And then we just finished, and we're still pilot testing our rebar cost estimating, because that process is actually quite different when you're estimating. And next week in Chicago, a week from today, I have a meeting with a contractor, one of our own contractors, for they call it architectural metal and glass, which, we could equate that to be like curtain wall.
Yes.
So we will have a class for that specialty as well. It's just getting kicked off, the development of it. So I do development work, and I do a little bit of teaching. I don't have to do a lot of teaching because it's very, very time consuming, but otherwise I administer programs, and we're always looking for new classes that we can add to our course catalog. But we do a lot of administration. Like I said, we travel our courses around, and we have a system. This would take too much time to explain how the fairness works, but we've got something called district councils. It's really an ironworker term, district councils around the country, and they all get to request a class. They don't have to have a class, but if they want a class every year, they get a class. And nice. We will send out our vendor, and the vendor will go and teach the class for them.
That's beautiful. Now, I wanted to ask you, because this is something that we've talked about quite a bit on classes. Health and mental health are becoming very important in our industry. People who watch the show know that we are the #1 industry for suicide in the United States for the last 2 years, and we want to stop being #1 in that way. What kind of courses, or what is Impact doing with the ironworkers in this area, Cindy?
Yeah, it's a great question. On the, I told you this before, I really like the self-reflection, like the deep inner work. I think every person could really benefit from that kind of an experience. And so I would say lately, there's a few programs that have been launched. I wouldn't call them specifically training. Mm-hmm. But they're resources, strong resources. So the first one is, we have a maternity program. So I consider this to be a wellness resource. We don't want to lose our women iron workers. And so when they get pregnant, they can only stay on the job site so long, and then they can't be doing that kind of very difficult physical labor. And so we have a maternity program for these women who they need to take some time off maybe there's no way to keep them in the office, or they stay in the office as long as they can, but maybe at some point they need to stop working until they, have their baby and have maternity leave. So we've got some upfront benefits before the baby's born and some benefits afterwards to give them some time. And the idea is we want to keep them in the industry. We just don't want them just saying, I have no other option, I've got to quit, I'm done. So we want them to be able to continue their career. So that's one of our big programs.
Yeah, and I think, for as a member of the human race, I think it's lovely that people want to keep having kids. Please, let's continue. So this is as my friend in Germany says, this is not a problem. We need to have ways to encourage people to start their families, and if they want to keep working, keep working.
That's right. Yeah, and there's other countries that maybe do a better job than the US, but this is a fantastic program. I don't have all the statistics, admittedly, but I think it's helped tremendously to retain many of our women ironworkers, because just because they're an ironworker doesn't mean they don't want to have children. Lots of people want to have children. So we're trying to make it possible for them to have both a career and to have children, right? So this should not be a mystery. This is the 21st century. so on the topic of mental health, big push right now in the Ironworker. So I'm going to kind of hold this up if you can see it here.
Yeah, I can see it.
We have this little we call it a trifold, and the emphasis here is we're distributing these to our members because, as you absolutely said, mental health, suicide especially, is I think the construction industry has the highest suicide rate, or pretty close to it.
It does.
And then within the construction industry, I believe the iron workers are number 1 or number 2 in terms of their suicide rate. So fortunately, we've had some very forward-looking leaders, and many of them recognize that the whole issue of suicide and addiction oftentimes are connected. So here's how it often will play out. You've got an iron worker, they're working on the job site, they get injured. They go to the doctor. Unfortunately, the doctor gives them an opioid painkiller. And if they've got that addictive tendency, you can call it a gene or just a tendency, they become addicted. They didn't intend to. They're not bad people. They almost become just a victim of the circumstance. So then they become addicted, but it's just a downward spiral. If people who've been through that cycle, it's very difficult to overcome an addiction, and they just feel worse and worse about themselves, and that leads to suicidal thoughts and tendencies. So we recognize this spiral, and the iron workers have put a big emphasis, number 1, on addressing the addiction problem, but also in removing the stigma of suffering from an addiction, and especially in being in a recovery program. We've got some super strong members who are in recovery who are very vocal about putting together recovery programs. So far, I can tell you what I know about what we've been doing. We've certainly had no fewer than 4 webcasts. These would be live webcasts with experts who have talked about the addiction and suicide phenomenon going on right now. And we've put in place some programs through some experts, vendors, basically. So if a local union wants to put a program in place, they now have a resource. They can go to these vendors that we're working with. So we've got one webinar on an individual who I'll attribute the push from this individual. He might not be the only one, but he was willing to step up, admit that he had been in that cycle, and went through a very, very strong recovery program. And now he's just very vocal about telling everybody it works. And we can't just keep burying our head in the sand. We need to put in place recovery programs, and we need to remove the stigma. So he's really been instrumental. So we've had he got onto a webinar and basically told his story about what happened to him. And then since then, we've had 4 additional webinars on suicide and addiction. And there was a very emotional presentation recently from a contractor whose son had committed suicide. So we were, people are now coming out of the woodworks, being willing to tell their story, because that's one of the ways we learn. We learn
Right.
compassion by hearing what people go through, and that, what the techniques are they've used to actually survive, this sort of grief. So the Ironworkers have done a phenomenal job. I personally was so pleased when they started opening up and having these webinars. The other thing we're doing is at some of our major events, like we Impact have a conference every year. We have 2 major training events every year, in addition to all the other training. When we have these events, we are now scheduling in the evenings what we call a recovery meeting. So individuals that don't want to go to the free bar and get all the free drinks, they prefer to go to the recovery meeting. They have an alternative. So we are doing that. We are openly scheduling recovery meetings. Local unions are also allowing 12-step programs to be conducted at their local unions. I mean, it's really, in my mind, this is a positive development.
That's a major shift.
Terrific. You're right. It's a bit of a shift, and it's only taken place, I would say, within the last 5 years. And it's really taken off probably within the last 2 or 3, like really taken off. So they're doing a terrific job of just removing that stigma and allowing people to come out in the open and talk about their experience.
I absolutely love that. Cindy, we have so much more to talk about.
Yes.
But we have things to do. We need to GTD. So I want to thank you so much for coming on to the show and sharing all these beautiful stories of continuous improvement. And lean is alive and well in the Ironworkers in the United States and Canada, and I'm sure also abroad.
Well, I appreciate you inviting me on so I can talk about what's going on with IMPIC. There's just so much going on. You're right. We need half a day to talk about all the interesting programs that the Ironworkers are putting in place. I will give one final shout out that for any general contractor out there, I hope you're aware of the many ways that the unions are taking care of their people, in our case, the Ironworkers, but as well as serving their contractors. We just have this environment in the Ironworkers of mutual respect and, like you say, continuous improvement with the contractors and the individuals, and just interested in improving our industry.
Thank you so much, Cindy. Have a great rest of your day. Everyone out there, be well. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Very special thanks to my guest. I'm Felipe Engineer Manriquez. The EBFC show is created by Felipe and produced by a passion to build easier and better. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, everybody. Let's go build.